I like it because I know one thing for certain is that if you do get married, you must commit yourself to that.
Welcome back. Well, we have a bit of a treat for you now as we catch up with a man who's been serenading audiences for more than 6 decades with his timeless rock and roll classics selling more than anybody knows how to count. For decades, Cliff Richard was one of Britain's most beloved entertainers. A clean-cut pop star who outlasted trends, topped charts, and built a career on charm and talent. But then, seemingly overnight, he vanished from the spotlight. Fans were left wondering what happened. The truth behind his disappearance is far more painful than most ever realized. From betrayal by the media to years of public suspicion, this is the untold story of how Cliff Richard was pushed into the shadows. Was it a fall from grace or something more unjust? Join us as we explore the real reason why Cliff Richard vanished from the spotlight. From Lucknow to pop legend. Before he became a British music icon, Cliff Richard was just a shy boy named Harry Webb. Born under the heat and chaos of 1945's India. His early life began not in London or Liverpool like many of his peers, but in the bustling city of Lucknow, far from the spotlight. While bombs fell across Europe, young Harry spent his days in a modest home near Hazratganj, surrounded by stories, music, and the distant rhythms of Indian trains. No one could have guessed that this quiet boy with a second-hand guitar would one day redefine British rock and roll. As a schoolboy, Harry wasn't particularly outgoing. He preferred reading and mostly kept to himself. He did well enough in school to pass English literature and started his first job as a filing clerk. But music soon grabbed his attention, especially skiffle, a mix of jazz, folk, and blues popular among British youth. His father bought him a guitar when he turned 16, a gift that changed his life. Not long after he formed his first vocal group, the Quintons. By 1958, Harry had joined a rock and roll band named the Drifters. At the suggestion of his producer, he changed his stage name to Cliff Richard to sound edgier. His debut single, Move It, written by bandmate Ian Samuel, surprised many with its uncommon sound and its attitude. The song reached number 2 on the UK charts and it's often credited as Britain's first true rock and roll hit. Richard's early image was modelled after Elvis Presley. Slick back hair, leather jackets, and a brooding gaze, but his music began to evolve. His 5th single, Living Doll, marked a shift toward a softer style. It became his first number 1 hit. Legal issues with the American Drifters led the band to rebrand themselves as the Shadows. The new lineup featuring Hank Marvin, Jet Harris, Tony M.I., and Bruce Welch quickly became one of the most successful backing groups in British music history. Cliff Richard wasn't just a pop star. He became a cultural icon during the late 1950s and early 1960s. He released a string of chart-topping singles like Travel in Light, I Love You, and A Voice in the Wilderness. He also started acting, debuting in the 1959 film Serious Charge, and later starring in musicals like The Young Ones and Summer Holiday. These films were massive hits and turned Richard into a household name. In fact, he was the UK's top box office draw in 1962 and 1963, even beating James Bond. Though Richard was a sensation in the UK, his success didn't fully translate to the US. Despite multiple attempts, including appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show, he couldn't break into the American market. Songs like It's All in the Game and Constantly had modest success, but never made him a major star. Across the Atlantic, behind the scenes, the Shadows started recording their own music, becoming a standalone act. Richard, meanwhile, diversified his sound. He recorded ballads, explored country music, and even worked with Nashville producers. Songs like The Minute You're Gone showed his ability to adapt to changing musical trends. Though the band changed members over the years, they remained loyal collaborators and many of Richard's biggest hits continued to feature their work. By the mid-1960s, Richard had cemented his place in British pop. He wasn't just a teen idol. He was a durable performer with a growing catalogue of hits. He managed to stay relevant even as musical tastes shifted dramatically. His consistent output and ability to reinvent himself kept him in the spotlight well beyond his early years. But as the swinging 60s roared on and the music scene grew louder and bolder, how would Cliff Richard carve out a place that was truly his own through change and conviction? In a decade when British pop exploded with revolutionary sounds, Cliff Richard stood out because of his ability to evolve. While the Beatles were rewriting the rules of fame, Cliff was navigating a more personal transformation, one that would test his identity as a performer and change his legacy. His journey through shifting musical tides, spiritual awakening, and global fame tells a story of resilience, reinvention, and unwavering belief. By the mid-1960s, the music world was changing fast. Cliff had once been Britain's answer to Elvis, but the arrival of the Beatles and the rise of Merseybeat tilted the spotlight elsewhere. Though no longer chart-topping with every release, he remained a steady presence. His singles continued to make waves in the UK, and he scored a few US hits, including It's All in the Game, but America never fully embraced him as part of the British invasion. Behind the scenes, a deeper shift was taking place. In 1964, Cliff embraced Christianity, a decision that influenced every aspect of his life. Though raised Anglican, he hadn't practiced his faith seriously until that point. His conversion was so deep that he initially considered leaving the music industry altogether. Believing he couldn't reconcile his spiritual values with his stage persona, he thought about becoming a teacher. Friends urged him to stay. They believed his platform could serve a greater purpose, and Cliff listened. Instead of quitting, he redirected his career, performing with Christian groups, recording gospel-influenced songs, and appearing at evangelistic events. Yet, he didn't abandon his pop roots either. With the Shadows still by his side, he balanced faith and fame, becoming a rare figure who could sing about love and loss one day and stand on a faith-based stage the next. In 1965, On My Word marked the end of his unprecedented streak of 23 straight top 10 UK hits. But Cliff kept pushing forward. In 1967, The Day I Met Marie reached number 10 in the UK and became a hit in Australia. That same year, he starred in To a Penny, a film centered around drugs, doubt, and spiritual rebirth, mirroring the transformation in his real life. In 1968, Cliff took the Eurovision stage with Congratulations. Though he famously lost by a single point, hiding in a restroom as the results came in, the song became a major hit across Europe and Australia and another UK chart topper. The disappointment didn't last. Cliff remained in high demand both on screen and on stage. After the Shadows split in 1968, Cliff kept working. From 1970 to 1976, he hosted the popular variety show It's Cliff Richard, featuring regulars like Olivia Newton-John. He recorded live albums in Japan and continued touring across Europe. He returned to Eurovision in 1973 with Power to All Our Friends, finishing third. Though this time he nearly missed the performance after taking too much Valium for nerves. Despite his clean-cut image, not every project landed smoothly. In 1975, Cliff unknowingly released a song titled Honky Tonk Angel, unaware it was slang for a prostitute. Mortified, he pulled the track, even after a video had been made. Only about 1,000 vinyl copies escaped destruction. After years of playing it safe, was Cliff finally ready to take a bolder path? After years of fading radio play and changing musical tastes, 1976 marked a turning point for Cliff Richard. Instead of giving in to the decline, he took a risk, reinventing himself as a rock artist. The result, a bold new sound, a fresh image, and a career revival that stunned both fans and critics. His album I'm Nearly Famous was the spark. It featured Devil Woman, a gritty hit that became his first true success in the US, and the heartfelt ballad Miss Unites. At the same time, Cliff didn't abandon his spiritual side. He continued releasing contemporary Christian records, including Small Corners featuring the worshipful single Yes He Lives. He also performed Hey Mr. Dream Maker live during the Queen's Silver Jubilee festivities at the BBC's A Jubilee of Music. Then in 1979, Cliff hit the pop jackpot again. Teaming once more with Bruce Welch and songwriter Alan Tarney, he released We Don't Talk Anymore. The track soared to number 1 in the UK and number 7 in the US, making Cliff the only artist to chart in the Hot 100 across 4 decades. Included on Rock and Roll Juvenile, rebranded We Don't Talk Anymore in the US, it became his best-selling single, shifting nearly 5 million copies worldwide. That year, he also shared a stage with Kate Bush and the London Symphony Orchestra at the Royal Albert Hall. The momentum continued into the 1980s. In the US, Carrie and Dream Man entered the top 40, while his duet with Olivia Newton-John suddenly reached number 20. In the UK, Carrie hit number 4 and Dreaming peaked at number 8. AllMusic praised Carrie as an enthrallingly atmospheric track. Meanwhile, in 1980, Cliff officially changed his legal name and was honored with an OBBE for his services to music and charity. Between 1980 and 1983, he released a string of albums, all featuring chart-friendly singles. Wired for Sound cracked the UK top 5 and did well in Australia. Daddy's Home hit number 2. Cliff kept evolving. In 1986, he teamed up with the Young Ones cast to re-record Living Doll for comic relief, reaching number 1 with a charitable twist. That year also saw him star in the sci-fi musical Time, release several singles, and survive a serious car crash, emerging shaken, but still on the stage that very night. His resurgence continued with Always Guaranteed, its singles My Pretty One and Some People reaching the UK top 10. In 1988, Cliff hit Christmas number 1 with Mistletoe and Wine, his 99th UK single and best-selling song of the year, with 750,000 copies sold. His compilation album Private Collection went quadruple platinum. In 1989, he released his 100th single, The Best of Me, which climbed to number 2. His album Stronger produced 3 more top 20 singles. That year, Cliff received the Brit Award for Outstanding Contribution and headlined the event at Wembley Stadium to a crowd of 44,000. In 1990, he performed at Nebworth Park alongside rock legends, helping to raise $10.5 million for charity. The live album From a Distance followed, and the Christmas number 1 Saviour's Day added to his tally. Cementing his legacy, Cliff released Together with Cliff Richard in 1991, followed by the album in 1993, which debuted at number 1. He continued to chart and work on stage musicals, signaling both commercial success and creative ambition. In 2008, Cliff Richard marked half a century in music with a major celebration. His 8-CD box set And They Said It Wouldn't Last was released alongside a new single, Thank You for a Lifetime, which climbed to number 3 in the UK charts. Later that year, fans got even bigger news: Cliff and the Shadows were reuniting. After decades apart, the legendary band returned to the stage, performing at the Royal Variety Performance. In 2009, they launched a Golden Anniversary tour across the UK, followed by a European tour in 2010. That same year, they released Reunited, their first studio album together in 40 years. It featured 25 re-recordings of their classic hits and 3 songs from their early days that hadn't been previously recorded. The album debuted at number 6 in the UK and peaked at number 4. The band's return was a hit with both longtime fans and a new generation discovering their music. In 2009, Cliff also traveled to Nashville to record a jazz-inspired album. The session was short, just 1 week, but produced 14 tracks, showing his continued desire to explore new sounds. In April 2010, Cliff sang Congratulations at Queen Margaret II of Denmark's 70th birthday celebration. Later that year, for his own 70th birthday, he performed 6 shows at the Royal Albert Hall. To go with the concerts, he released Bold as Brass, an album of swing standards. A party followed with celebrity guests including Cilla Black and Daniel O'Donnell. After rehearsals in Belgium, he made a surprise appearance at Antwerp's Night of the Proms in October 2010, singing We Don't Talk Anymore to 20,000 fans. That winter, he headlined the full Proms tour across 12 German cities, performing 18 shows to more than 300,000 people. His Bold as Brass DVD reached number 1 on the UK Music DVD chart, his 3rd consecutive number 1 in 3 years. Outside music, Cliff fought for performers' rights. He supported extending copyright protections from 50 to 95 years. Though initially unsuccessful, his efforts eventually helped push legislation that extended UK music copyright to 70 years, protecting recordings from 1963 onward. In 2013, he released the fabulous Rock and Roll Songbook, his 100th album. It celebrated the roots of his career with classic rock covers. By then, his discography included 47 studio albums, 35 compilations, 11 live albums, and 7 film soundtracks. Cliff was set to open for Morrissey at Brooklyn's Barclays Center in June 2014. When Morrissey cancelled due to illness, Cliff quickly organized a free show for fans in New York, showing his commitment to his audience. In 2015, Cliff celebrated his 75th birthday with a national tour, including 6 shows at the Royal Albert Hall, his most performed venue. The Guardian praised the shows as energetic and heartfelt. 3 years later, he released Rise Up, his first album of new material in 14 years. Its title track topped the UK vinyl singles chart. In 2019, he duetted with Bonnie Tyler on Taking Control. He followed this with Music, The Air That I Breathe, in 2020, showing he had no plans to slow down. In 2022, Cliff delighted fans at Wimbledon by singing Summer Holiday as part of the tournament's centenary celebration, proof that even after 7 decades, his voice and spirit still resonate. Even with new songs and surprise performances, Cliff still faced challenges behind the scenes. After all his success, what were some of the challenges that he faced? Fight for fair airplay. Despite decades of success, Cliff Richard has long voiced frustration over the lack of support he receives from major radio stations and the wider music industry. In a 2007 appearance on The Alan Titchmarsh Show, he openly criticized the system that favors new acts while sidelining veteran performers like himself. While newer artists rely on airplay to build their careers, Richard argued that established musicians also depend on radio exposure to stay relevant. He noted that during the 1980s, radio was more inclusive, often playing his songs and helping to sustain his chart presence, but more recent decades have seen a sharp drop in airplay, especially for older artists. In the BBC Radio 2 documentary Cliff, Take Another Look, he pointed out how many retrospectives on British music history often exclude both him and the Shadows despite their impact. This lack of recognition isn't just about airplay. In 1998, radio host Chris Evans vowed never to play Cliff Richard's music again, claiming he was too old. In 2004, DJ Tony Blackburn was suspended from Classic Gold Digital after playing Richard's songs against management instructions. The station claimed Richard didn't fit their brand values. In protest, Blackburn read their internal email live on air and played more of Cliff's music to an audience of 400,000 listeners. In 2011, Absolute Radio 60s made headlines when they refused to include Richard in their playlist. The station's team said his songs didn't align with the cool sound they were curating. DJ Pete Mitchell remarked that timeless 1960s acts like the Beatles and The Who were still relevant, implying Cliff wasn't. Richard fired back, calling the decision dishonest and saying they are lying to themselves and the public. Beyond the media, Richard has spoken out against the music industry's glorification of destructive behavior. In contrast to many of his peers, he never engaged in the use of medication, wild partying or scandals. "I have never wanted to trash a hotel room," he said, adding that avoiding medication and promiscuity made him one of the most radical figures in British rock because he didn't follow the crowd. His choice to live clean has often made him the odd one out in an industry that thrives on controversy. In 2013, Richard criticized the pressure on young artists to remain edgy or provocative. He expressed concern about how the industry pushes sexually explicit imagery, citing Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball video as an example. Years earlier, he had voiced discomfort with Alice Cooper's shock rock performances and once described Oasis's public behavior as self-destructive. This disconnect between Richard and mainstream industry norms has led to both criticism and admiration. In a 2011 Guardian article, journalist Sam Leith noted that Richard's strong Christian faith and clean lifestyle have made him a mystery to younger generations. Yet another Guardian writer, John Robb, argued that Richard's refusal to conform, his rebellion against rebellion, made him a true countercultural figure. Richard himself believes that 2 of his biggest hits, Mistletoe and Wine and the Millennium Prayer, may have contributed to the industry's distance. Their overtly Christian themes, paired with their popularity, sparked criticism and may have further alienated him from radio decision-makers. "Airplay is vital," he said in 2013. "But there's ageism in the industry. If I record a new song now, I doubt it will get a fair chance." Still, many in the industry continue to stand by him. Music critic Tony Parsons once said, "If you don't like at least some Cliff Richard, then you don't like pop music." And Sting called Richard one of Britain's finest singers technically and emotionally. Despite the obstacles, Cliff Richard remains one of the most enduring figures in British music, respected, if not always played. But behind the scenes, something more serious was unfolding. something that would soon push him out of the spotlight completely. What was it that made Cliff Richard step away from the public eye? Behind the public image was a personal life marked by quiet loss and, much later, public scrutiny that nearly destroyed his peace. One of the most painful parts of his private life was his love for Olivia Newton-John. He admitted she was the only woman he had ever truly loved. But she married someone else, his own bandmate. Cliff never married or had children. Years later, Olivia died in his presence, and it left a wound that stayed with him for the rest of his life. Professionally, Cliff kept going. Unlike many of his peers, he stayed relevant across decades. Hits like Devil Woman in 1976 and Mistletoe and Wine in 1988 brought him continued success. His ability to shift between musical styles while maintaining his values made him a unique figure in British pop. Then in 2014, everything changed. His home was raided by police while BBC cameras captured the event live. The broadcaster had made a deal with authorities to film the search even though Cliff had not been charged with any crime. He was not informed in advance, and the images were broadcast around the world. The impact was immediate. Cliff described feeling violated and said his home no longer felt like a safe place. He lost weight, suffered from shingles, and struggled to sleep. The emotional toll was heavy, and the legal process dragged on for nearly 2 years. In the end, the accusation against him collapsed. The claims didn't hold up, and the supposed timeline didn't make sense. Despite this, the damage to his reputation had already been done. Cliff said later that even when proven innocent, the stain of a false accusation can remain in the public mind. He went to court to challenge the way he had been treated. In 2018, he won his case against the BBC. A judge ruled that his privacy had been seriously violated. The broadcaster issued a public apology and Cliff was awarded damages. While the legal result gave some closure, it didn't undo the personal harm. Throughout the ordeal, his Christian faith gave him strength. It was something he had leaned on for years, and during that time, it helped him manage stress and isolation. Today, Cliff Richard remains active in music. He continues to perform and record, though with more control over his schedule and public appearances. He's no longer just remembered for chart success. He's also recognized for standing up for his rights and challenging the way public figures are treated by the media. After everything he's faced, how has Cliff Richard managed to keep going for so long? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.